Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Joy Monfried. I'm the president of BeBOLD, which stands for Bedford, Building Our Lives Drug-Free. And I am so grateful tonight to introduce Brian O'Keefe and Keith Dillon. Brian is from the Manchester Police Department, Keith from the Nashua Police Department, and they have an incredible story to share with you, as well as some amazing information that falls right in line with Be Bold in our mission. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and thanks for coming out on this rainy night. And take it away, Brian and Keith.
For a living. So currently I'm the Public Information Officer of the Manchester Police Department. I've been on just under 23 years. I have 4 kids, my wife and I. 2 of them graduated from Bedford High School in the last couple of years. One's graduating from the Ohio State. Go Buckeyes, they killed Michigan. I won't get into that right now. I have another daughter that's a freshman at UNH. And then we have my 6th grade son, and we have a 5th grade daughter. We just feel it's important to let the community know that we have to work together in unison. We're all in this together. We all have kids, whether our kids are in 5th grade, 6th grade, or 12th grade. It's imperative for us to educate the next generation coming up and give them the dangers and the talking points, factual talking points on drugs and alcohol.
Good evening again. Thank you guys for coming. We do appreciate it. I know it's a rainy day, and unfortunately sometimes Murphy's Law will tell you that's when it happens. So, as Joy said, my name is Keith Dillon. I am a lieutenant with the Nashua Police Department. I currently work in the patrol division on the midnight shift, so these bags under my eyes are not deliberate. They're just the quality of life that I get to receive while being a police officer overnight. So I've been there for 19 years. Prior to that, I spent 8 years in the military. My job currently as a police officer, for 19 years, I've worked everywhere from patrol to detectives in narcotics and into the Detectives Bureau back again. So I've done several stints on the different divisions, and I really have got an opportunity to kind of gain some experience in some real life stories. And as Brian said, you know, our whole goal on this was really, we're not coming to you as police officers. We're actually coming to you as parents, brothers, fathers, and community members. We just happen to have the ability to kind of decipher some of it and kind of have a better understanding because of our field of work. Joy explains in many cases we talk about Brian as my brother. So I am 46 years old, and as a young boy, Brian and I became family. This is usually the part where I get kind of emotional. It's kind of a long story, but I'm going to give you guys the best version of it. So at 46 years old, after 30-something years, Brian and I became friends and brothers through his father. As a young boy, I came from a family of 9 brothers and 2 sisters, Catholic family out of Lowell, Massachusetts, and we experienced a lot of dysfunctional alcohol, drugs, addiction, early death in our lives. So it changed who I was, and it gave me a different mindset in life. So as a 10-year-old boy, Brian's dad, who was a police officer in the city of Lowell, came to my home and responded to a call. He was working as a police officer in the city of Lowell. I had a brother who was an alcoholic, and we struggled as a family because my parents were deceased. My dad died when I was 2, my mother when I was 10, and my stepdad when I was 11. And fortunately for me, I had Mickey, Brian's dad, take a liking to me. What he did was he fell in love with me, he says, and still to this day, 30-something years later, he tells everybody, I fell in love with him the minute I met him. I didn't know him, didn't understand who he was or why he would want to be interested in helping me, because I was a 10-year-old boy who'd been through a tremendous amount of trauma in our life. The reason I tell you about the trauma part is because it's the beginning of the evolution of how addiction and all these different incidents occur in our lives because of the things we go through. Fast forward through a military career, high school military career, and then as a police officer, I was very fortunate. Now, through those fortunes, I've had the unfortunate opportunity to watch my family members pass away at an alarming rate. One of the most difficult stories is not a death physically, but the death of a young man who basically was a really hard worker and was a young man trying to raise his family, who's my brother, biological brother. He was an alcoholic, and in 1996, in May of 1996, he was intoxicated, got behind the wheel, and he crashed and killed a young girl, a 10-year-old. It's still emotional. After all these years, it's emotional to know that he took some young girl's life, and he took a child away from a family. He took his own life and put himself in jail for many years because of this. And again, we keep talking about all these tragedies, but really our point in this whole thing is to get to you guys that it starts early on. We were exposed to drugs and alcohol at such a young age that it really wasn't a big deal to us. Fortunately for me, and fortunately for my brother, Mark, who is now recovered and has not had a drink since that day, has been released from prison. He's contributing to society. He's a successful businessman, and he works 6-7 days a week to repay his debt to society, and he really has. He made a mistake, but I will tell you, as a police officer, I'm very torn with that, because as a police officer, I fight every day to put those people away. And, you know, he's a good person, but he was affected by addiction and alcohol and drugs. So because of that, it impacted his life and will forever until he's gone. So our purpose behind here is to kind of give you guys some insight. And Brian's story is tremendous in the sense where I say, as a brother, he's taken me into his family since day one, and we've had an opportunity to do this. And what we really want to do is kind of go over our mission statement. We wanted to give you guys some background as to why we do this. We are impacted and affected daily, not just personally, but professionally. So,
well, I think it's important to note, I mean, just like his brother Mark, I have a brother that's been battling addiction for over 20 years, and the adverse effects it has on a family is tremendous. It doesn't make the headlines. You have grandparents raising grandkids. My parents raised a grandson for a number of years before he went back with his other maternal grandmother. The devastation and the wake they leave in their trail, you can't even explain it. It's incomprehensible. And it's hard because here we are, we're both police officers, combined, I don't know what, 40 years of service, and it has an adverse effect on our families. And basically, we want to do this to let everyone know that you're not alone in this. It happens to every family that's out there. And it's not a little secret. It happens here in Bedford, just like next door in Manchester and Nashua and everywhere else. And if you don't think it happens here, get your head out of the sand. It happens everywhere. So you have to be aware of what's going on. Stay active in your kids' lives. Sports, theater, whatever they do, you have to keep them active. That's the key to success. And basically, how long has it been, Joy? 3 years since BeBOLD started. I mean, the mission statement's up there, right? Bedford Community Coalition, comprised of parent and youth volunteers. What do we have here? Parent and youth volunteers, as well as police and school district professionals working together to provide a safe and healthy environment for our students by creating awareness and implementing programs to eliminate drug, alcohol, and tobacco use. I can tell you, part of my history is I ran a boxing gym for almost 6 years for the Police Athletic League in Manchester. I had inner city kids from all over the area. What I can tell you is what FBI does studies and statistics, latchkey kids, that's a term you're going to hear all the time. Latchkey kids are kids that go home to an empty house between 2:30 and 6:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. Guess what? You have latchkey kids here in Bedford. It's not just an inner city thing. You have parents that work in Bedford, like you have parents that work in other cities and municipalities. So if your kid's home by themselves during those hours, that's when nefarious activities happen. That's when drug use goes up. That's when teen pregnancy goes up. That's when involvement in gangs go up. The list is on and endless, and it continues to grow. So those are the most important hours in your kid's life, is those hours Monday through Friday when they're home by themselves for several hours. So keep that in mind and be cognizant of that. You have to be aware of these things. We're not telling you to scare you. We're telling you some simple facts, and that's all we're going to do today. And we're going to start off with Alex's story. We've shown this in the past. This is pretty powerful. This kid's going to tell you the evolution of drugs in his particular his life.
In a very brief moment, he will. Oops.
Oh,
I didn't mean that way. Meaning he's going to say it in a very few words.
I am a recovering addict. My use started when I was 13 years old, and the last day I used was 6 days before my 18th birthday. I started out as a recreational marijuana smoker, and slowly over time I became heavily involved in drugs, and in the last stint of my use I was shooting up heroin pretty much every day.
Now, age 13, which is generally when we start this, when we're putting this out here. And I'll be honest with you, with the way that children are advancing today, the experience and the knowledge that they have through social media, their exposure through children in school and outside in the public, I would prefer 4th, 5th, 6th graders even. And I hate to say it because to some, they probably think it's too much early exposure, but the harsh reality is the way we are going to beat this is to educate our children. We can put people away for the rest of their lives. We're not fixing the problem. We need to educate you guys, because if you have a better understanding as to how it can occur, as simple as watching someone like Alex saying at age 13 he started at marijuana because according to the people, marijuana is not a gateway drug. It's not a big deal. Well, I want you to know that the marijuana is a huge deal for you guys, as well as the alcohol. So here it's very simple. What are gateway drugs? A gateway drug is a drug that opens the door to other harder drug use.
I can tell you right now, my brother started smoking marijuana when he was a young kid. He shoots up heroin multiple times a day. And he's afraid of needles, always has been. I can just tell you right now that he never once thought smoking marijuana was going to lead to what he's doing today. But guess what? That evolution happens. So when the mainstream media tells you it's not going to happen, don't believe the hype.
Alcohol, tobacco, or marijuana. Even tobacco. As much as we want to market it, it's not as bad, because unfortunately society has seen this view of the opioids, because now everything else has been pushed to the back burner. Opioids is such a major thing right now in this country that I hate to say this, but parents are willing to say, well, at least he's not doing heroin. At least he's not doing fentanyl. Well, I have news for you. The tobacco is as addictive as the alcohol, and the marijuana is as addictive as the others. And then fast forward to once that addiction cannot be treated, or you're not achieving that high anymore, you ultimately end up looking for something more. So those gateway drugs, which essentially open the door for your addiction, will lead you to bigger things. And there are other mitigating circumstances. It could be anything from your genetics. You don't know if you have an addictive disposition, and then you end up trying something for the first time, and you become hooked. There are thousands of stories in this country of kids who started their first drink, their first marijuana cigarette, their first pill, and that it led them to heroin and fentanyl, ultimately to death, in a life of addiction prior to that.
And if you think it can't happen the first time you use, you're wrong. Just in New Hampshire alone this year, right up and through last week, we've had 288 deaths in the state of New Hampshire, drug-related. 288 people that lost their lives which means 288 families lost a loved one. That's just this state. I mean, for 1.1 million people that live in this state, that's a pretty grotesque number. And whether numbers are up or down is irrelevant. It's happening too frequently.
Yeah, and speaking of numbers, like what's in a number? 90% of addiction starts in the teen years. 90%. 40% of those teens see no risk in drinking. You know why? Because they see, and parents, I'm not giving you a hard time, but they see parents drinking socially. They see the media. They see commercials. What do they do with commercials? They glamorize the drinking. You can't be the good-looking guy or the good-looking girl or sit in a bar without having a drink. So it makes it seem as if you really can't be somebody special unless you're drinking. And these kids, 40%, see it not as a problem because we've actually diminished the importance of addiction. And 90% of drinking in teens in the form of binge drinking, 90%. 12 to 19-year-olds drink 11% of the alcohol in this country. 11%. Although teens drink less often than adults, when they do drink, they consume more. Why? Because they don't understand, they don't comprehend the body and the way you absorb it and the way you metabolize alcohol. And to make it clear, guys, the way you burn it and process it off. You know when your mom tells you guys only one cookie because then you'll be running around 100 miles an hour? Well, you eat that cookie and you get that sugar rush and you're running around and then all of a sudden you're like, whew, there's your dump. Well, your body is metabolizing and burning that. That's what it's doing. So when the same as alcohol, what you guys don't understand is you see your parents or people having a drink, and essentially what they're doing is they're drinking that beverage over a period of time. So their body is slowly metabolizing it and processing it so that they're not impacted immediately. So what kids don't understand and what high schoolers don't understand, guys, is that, and when I say guys, I'm referring to you boys in this group, and I apologize, I'm not trying to be rude here, but really what you don't understand is when you drink a beverage that's an alcoholic beverage, you don't realize it doesn't have an immediate effect, okay? It takes your body a few to kind of get that feeling. So what happens is you decide, wow, that didn't hit me right away, so you drink another one. And if that didn't hit you right away, you drink as fast as you can. So then what happens is the body says, whoa, you just pumped down, 30 ounces of a beer or 30 ounces of a culotta or whatever they call those things, or cooler or wine cooler. Or you take a shot of alcohol and it ends up hitting your body a few minutes later and you take 2 or 3. That's what happens. That's when it's the most risky, because that's when we talk about binge drinking. Okay? Yeah.
Don't you have one with the beer?
It's coming. It'll come up. Yep. So we talk about binge drinking. 88,000 people die a year from alcohol. And the biggest reason we have right now is again, I said earlier, it's socially acceptable. It's teaching kids to use substances rather than cope. Because if you have a problem at home, or if you have a problem at school, or you're having a personal problem outside of the house, it's easier to drink. That's the perception. It's easier to drink and forget about that than it is to address the issues that you guys have as young men. It's going to be difficult. Life is not going to be easy. But I will tell you that turning to a drink or to drugs to mask that will only prolong the issues that you are having in your life.
Well, the problem is it's a depressant. Alcohol is a depressant. So most people that have substance abuse problems have some sort of mental health deficiency. It deals with the dopamine in your brain, right? You're always trying to get that high, get that rush, feel better about yourself. So suddenly you decide to have a drink or drugs and, oh, lo and behold, you feel great for an instant, but guess what? That depression, you keep sinking deeper and deeper. And the dopamine in your brain that is affected from the alcohol or drugs, it's the same thing with computers, social media. Anxiety and depression is going through the roof. Read any medical journal right now. You know why? Because of the anxiety and depression of fitting in with social media. How many likes did I get? How many people like me? How many people like the story I just shared on Instagram or Snapchat? That's a real problem here. So this goes beyond just drugs and alcohol. this can be very easily tied into social media use and abuse and misuse. It's a real problem. You know, you have cyberbullying, right? You're at a party. Hey, we're drinking and showing off, and we're taking photos and selfies and sending them on social media, but Joy's not invited. Suddenly she's going, oh, geez, I thought I was friends with Keith and Brian. It all ties in together. This is not exclusive. Drugs, alcohol, social media, that's a problem too. So we're going to update our slides next story here, but it's important to get that out there. I want you kids to understand that, you know, social media can be used for good and not so good acts. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Actually, it leads on to that. Given that platform, when you guys have that platform, we're finding that kids are more apt to drink to excess with the whole binge drinking because they actually want to be able to put their story out, because their story becomes more glorious if they're more inebriated and they're so drunk they're falling down. Because why? People will view it. So they're more risky behavior, jumping off of porches, diving into pools from the roof of a pool house, causing serious bodily injury to yourself because your levels of impairment change your decision making. You guys understand that as you get further intoxicated or under the influence, your decision making can go down. You can't comprehend the dangerousness of that. It really is difficult. So again, to go back to that, alcohol deaths up 50% since 2000.
Now, on that note, I can tell you back in 2017, the state of New Hampshire had 488 drug-related deaths. 488. And sure, this year we're down to 288, which sounds great, but Narcan wasn't as prevalent, which is an opiate antagonist, right? It can bring you back to life. We see it every day in the city. They see it every day in the city. So, sure, we're allowing somebody to live another day, to take another drug. Good, bad, or indifferent, I'm not going to be the judge. I'm not God. But I can tell you that our numbers are way down. Is it because of safe station programs like in the Manchester Fire Department? Maybe. Is it because rehabs are becoming more prevalent? Maybe. Or is it because of Narcan saving people? I don't know. I don't have the answers. You'd need some longitudinal studies to show you, 10 years from now what helped and what didn't help. We're not here to discuss that. We're just telling you that numbers are down, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're tackling the problem and doing all the right things. I think we're doing a lot of right things. I think, the 2 U.S. senators have just passed some funding bills. I think a lot of good things are happening. But, opiate problems are not new and exclusive in the United States. The 30s, the 50s, the 70s, it's been around for a long time. This is not exclusive to today's generation. People need to read up on history. We're not going to give you a history lesson, but you have to understand that it's prevalent today. Our education, and hopefully by being proactive with these young kids, maybe it's going to be another 30 years before this is a problem again. Hopefully it's not a problem again in 30 years. But right now we need to deal with the problems we have.
It is a good sign that you guys are here. When we have people bringing their families, their kids, it's because they have some concerns and they're interested in making a difference in the community, and it really does. I'll be quite honest with you, I wouldn't care if there was one kid sitting up here. Because if it affected and impacted one kid and changed one kid's life, and he chose not to have a drink, then we've done our part. If there are 100 of you, then all the better. But I really don't need a number. I'm just grateful to see the parents here tonight, because that really is important, because we're leading the way here by setting the example. Okay, we talk about the binge drinking, we'll go through that. 50% of the annual deaths that occur every year, binge drinking. And Brian will segue into the opioids again, but the alcohol kills way more than opioids will ever do. It's so more readily available in society that it's not that big a deal. As I said earlier tonight, because of the impact of opioids, drinking has been put down to the wayside. Marijuana has been put down to the wayside.
Oh, they're legalizing it.
It's not a big deal anymore. Well, I have news for you. I have never, in my 19 years of police in law enforcement, and 8 years in the military where I worked in law enforcement there, I have never met an addict that has said to me, oh, I wish I could wake up every day. I love waking up every day addicted to heroin. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. But I will tell you what I have heard them say, and almost in all cases. If I had never started smoking marijuana, I wouldn't be where I am today. And that's the truth, guys. I am not going to sit in to talk about the comprehensive research and studies that they show. That is the truth, the honest truth that we are seeing. Not somebody who's paid to advertise or to support a certain agenda. These are addicts who are sitting in the back of my cruiser in handcuffs crying, saying if I had never started with marijuana or drinking, I would not be where I am today. And I can tell you in my years, I've watched those kids, and some of them, unfortunately, Brian and I have gone to their deaths, where we've actually had to go tell their families, or we've gone to their home because of an overdose call, and I see this kid and I think, man, it's been 20 years I've been watching this kid's decline. 20 years. It's sad. It really is. Here, we'll throw out a couple more things. Teen alcohol use kills 5,000 people every year. And that is including like DWIs, alcohol accidents. These are all factors. Teen alcohol abuse. It is a huge, huge killer. Remember we talked about you lose your inhibition to make good decisions. Jumping off that roof or driving in a car is not a big deal once you get into that point. And I'm telling you, that's a big deal. 1 in 6 teens drinks, binge drinks. New Hampshire ranks #2 in the nation.
Imagine that. We're one of the smallest states in the nation, but yet we're #2 for drinking, teen drinking. It's a pretty scary stat, not one to be proud of.
There's no direct correlation as to why, but I'm going to throw something out. It's really fancy that we can come off the highway and pick up a bottle of booze, yet jump on the highway and drive home, if we choose to do. Or we can just open it and drive home. Well, that I have a problem with. Again, that is up to the whole legislation portion. That is something that we as parents should be recognizing. The state makes a great benefit from this. The state does. None of us do. I know it's supposed to go to education and treatment, but it's really, it's a very impactful thing to think that we can actually jump off the highway and go and grab a bottle of booze, and it's controlled by the state.
Think there's mixed messages there for our kids? Don't drink and drive, but hey, you can get any liquor you want on the highway.
Guys, car crashes are the leading cause of death for teens. 40% of those deaths involve drinking and drug use. That's a pretty large number. Guys, remember we talked about a beer? You want to go over it?
Yeah, that's the important thing. So if you're drinking 1 beer, it's equivalent to like 1 wine cooler, Mike's Hard Lemonade, which is equivalent to the same 4-ounce glass of wine or 1 ounce of hard liquor. Those all have the same alcohol content. So whether you have 6 beers or 6 shots of a hard liquor, it's going to have an adverse effect on your body. And again, you don't know if you metabolize things quickly, slowly. It depends on your height, your weight, empty stomach content versus full stomach. You know, I like to tell kids all the time, right? You see that light switch over there? How do you know if you have an addictive personality? You don't until you try it, right? What I can tell you is my light switch, I can have a drink and I can shut it off and I'm good. My brother Sean's light switch, once it went on, it's stuck in the on position. He can't turn it off. He's a drug addict. He cannot shut off the light switch. So how did he know if he was going to have that? He gambled. Just like you're probably going to gamble at some point in your life, right? You don't know if you have the light switch that you can shut off or not. Fortunately, I can shut my light switch off. My brother cannot. So if you want to take the risk and try to drink or smoke marijuana or whatever you want to do, just remember one thing. Nobody's guaranteeing you that you can shut the light off. That first drink may be the one that leads to the next bad thing, to the next bad thing, and so on and so forth. That's up to you. We can't be there with you 24/7.
We will say, though, there used to be a belief that it was, well, we know you're going to do it. We know you're going to go to high school. We know you're going to try this. We know you're going to try that. Well, as a parent of 2 teenagers, one who is, well, actually he's not a teen anymore, God, now I feel old. He's 20, and he's a college student in the military, and a 17-year-old who's a senior. It scares the death out of me because I do not condone it. I will tell you guys, do not start it. I'm just giving you that. I'm not going to give you the pat you on the back and give you the, you know, the handshake and the wink and say, I know you're going to do it. I'm telling you, do not start it. You do not need it. I've always told my children, and I will continue to tell them, there are tons like you. tons like you in school that want to have the courage to stand up and say, no, I'm all set. I don't need a drink to have a good time. I want to go to this party and I don't need to have a drink. But there are a few who are going to push your buttons. They're dying for someone like you to say, hey man, I don't need a drink. Because the minute you do, you're going to set the example, and there's going to be a ton of kids behind you that are going to go, oh, thank God, because I didn't want to do it either, but I was feeling pressure. Yep. It's tough, man. It's tough. You're growing up in today's society. There is a lot of pressure on you guys, and I don't commend you for having to grow up in this age. But I will tell you, you can make a change, and you can make decisions that are going to affect you long time in your life, long term, and I promise you it will be good.
How many of you kids play sports in the room? Right? Guess what? When you get to Bedford High School, you're going to have to sign a contract. You want to play sports, you want to be in theater, the band, whatever you want to do, you got to sign that contract. So if you want to be a person that makes poor decisions and you want to go drink, you're going to be held accountable. So you may not make that state championship game. And yeah, that's happened. I have 2 kids that played sports in high school. It happens almost every year. I mean, if you want to gamble with that, go right ahead. You're going to lose, I guarantee it. I've seen it firsthand. I have 2 college students. Yeah, it scares me. I do not condone it. What they do when they're on their own, I've given them the tools to succeed. They can either put it in the toolbox and put it away for another day, or they can take the tools out and use them. It's not up to me. They're adults now. However, I can tell you at my house, absolutely not allowed. You want to drink in my house? Not until you're 21. I don't care who you are. You can be the president's son. Not happening. Not happening in my house. And parents need to take that hard line, because there's laws that prohibit you from giving youngsters, minors, alcohol in your house.
Yeah, I mean, what a lot of people don't understand is actually those days when we were younger, and I'm looking out in the crowd at the parents.
Just a decade or so ago, I think, for most.
It wasn't a big deal back then to maybe host a party, because the theory was, well, if we host a party, they're safe. We have the keys, they're at our house. Well, inevitably, children in the past have gotten out of the house or gotten the keys, and they end up getting into accidents. With that, we are in a society today that is very litigious, and they will sue on anything. So unfortunately, over the last few decades, we've had some criminal cases that have the case law that now stems from prior incidents. So here in New Hampshire, if you host a party of underage drinking, it is facilitating a party. You will get arrested. If you are the parent of the home and you are aware, even in some cases not aware, but allowed for the facility to be used, you are liable, not only criminally, but civilly. So I get the dilemma here, because there's the whole safety aspect and there's the wanting to be right. But I have to tell you, there's quite a few that just want to be cool. They want to be those parents that are the pool party parents, and they have everything going, and the kids get to have the drinks, and they're having a great slumber. But the problem is, the minute somebody in this town gets killed, everybody starts doing this. Because nobody wants to be responsible. We all wanted that role of being the great parent to hold the party. Well, let me tell you, the minute that those handcuffs go on, or the minute you become the defendant instead of the parent, it will change your whole view on how you should be. And just that law alone should be enough as parents to be scared. Like, I would not want I'm very clear on telling my kids, even if you go to a party, you can be put in custody. You can be detained for being underage.
Internal possession. They don't even have to see you with alcohol.
Even if you
smell
smell like alcohol in your breath, the state of New Hampshire can take you and detain you and write you a summons. And it seems absurd, but here's the reality. If I take 20 of you in a home, which is the way the law was made, if I come to a house party and there's 20 of you kids in a home, and I go, oh, Mom's not here? All right, see you later, guys. And I drive away, and I'm a police officer, and one of you gets in a car and drives off and gets killed, guess who's in trouble? Me, because I didn't do my job. And me, because I didn't get a hold of the parent and make sure the parent was in custody or take care of that. It's a whole different level. Guys, you guys have to realize, your mom and dads have worked really hard to give you everything that you guys have in your life. And you're just starting. You guys are still very young. Your mom and dads are busting their butt to provide a home for you. You open that door to have a party, and you go to high school or junior high, and you allow someone to drink and get killed or get seriously injured in your home, guess what's going to happen? They're taking your mom and dad's home. That's what they do. They go to court, they sue, you'll typically try to work a plea where you don't go to jail, and then you just give up your home, all for what? Because you want to be the guy on Snapchat, or you want to be the guy on Instagram showing the party and being the cool guy? Think about that, because it's going to be presented to you guys sooner than you think at your age. It's getting younger and younger as these parties start to develop more, because your knowledge and experience is so much more vast. You want to?
Yeah, the problem is, you know what, as a parent, I love my kids, but I'm not their friend. I'm not their friend. I'm their parent first.
I'm going to jump to that one.
And you know what? Sometimes you have to be the adult. It's okay to say no to your kids. They'll survive, right? You can tell them no for a lot of things. The key is the constant communication.
Do you want to jump back?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, you guys know what this is? You guys know what that is? It's a vaping pen, right? You can vape all kinds of stuff. Guess what? That's not healthy for you either. People think it's a healthy alternative to you know, smoking or marijuana. It's not. There's toxins in that. You don't know what you're putting in your body. The FDA is not approving all this stuff. Prescription pills. You get kids as young as junior high that go into mom and dad's medicine cabinet. Who has a medicine cabinet in here? I have one, right? You probably have unused, unwanted prescriptions. I guarantee everyone in here does. As much as we're doing a proactive education approach to get rid of unwanted, unused prescription meds, because it wasn't until the mid-90s that prescription meds started skyrocketing. Because Congress, in all their infinite wisdom, you know, the Medical Association added the fifth element of treatment called pain management. For us older people in here, when we were kids, you could get a tooth pulled. There was no smiley face to tell you how you were feeling on a scale of 1 to 10. That was irrelevant. Suck it up, buttercup, go home and take an aspirin. You'll be okay. Well, in the mid-90s, they decided to add the fifth element of treatment. And lo and behold, what do we have? We have pain medicines coming up through the roof. The oxys and perks and Vicodins. And what do? They're all opiate derivatives. I can tell you in our city in 2010, we seized 27 grams of heroin. 27 grams. 5 years later, over 27,000 grams. Why is that an important fact? Because in 2010, Purdue Pharma, who's the makers of Oxycontin and oxycodone, they've been sued so many times from municipalities for having these false pretenses saying this is not addictive. Look it up. You can find this anywhere you want if you want to do your own research. Well, they say they changed the molecular structure in 2010 because it was time, the patent was running out. I think they changed the molecular structure to make it more tamper-proof because they were sick of getting sued. So what happens? In 2010, when that happens, it's a little more tamper-proof, so it's harder for people to chop up and use it illegally. And don't get me wrong, Oxy, when it started, was a great thing for cancer patients. It was this miraculous time-release formula. It lasted, 24 hours. It was great for pain management. Well, people learned how to abuse it. So why is that important? It's expensive. It was $1 a gram on the street. They used to have a 110 milligram pill that cost $110. You can get a bag of heroin back then for $8-10. See the difference? And it's not just a harmless crime because it has an adverse effect on every one of us, you and the audience included. So people can only pay for this expensive drug habit by breaking into your car, going into your home, stealing things that you worked hard for. Why? To feed an addiction. Doesn't mean they're bad people. They're sick people. But they can't get money because they can't hold down a job. So you need to understand, you got to keep your medicine cabinets clean. Get rid of your stuff that every police station, including Bedford, has a drop box. A lot of drugstores have a drop box. We do a drug take-back a couple of times a year, sponsored by the DEA. Bedford does it, we do it, Nashua does it, most police agencies do. Why is that important? Bring your stuff and get rid of it. Eliminate that 1% risk that little Johnny's going to go in the medicine cabinet and take an opiate derivative for the first time in his life. Eliminate it. Get rid of it. Anybody ever have anyone do work at their house? Did you do a full background check on them? Probably not. Do you think when they say, Mr. O'Keefe, can I use the bathroom? 9 out of 10 times, yeah, maybe they go in the bathroom. It's that one time that they're going to go in and take stuff from your medicine cabinet. Be aware of these things. Be vigilant. Sorry.
No, that's okay. The biggest thing too, we talk about putting things in your body, guys. You never really know what you're taking. You know, we show these things, the pills, and marijuana. A lot of stuff, guys, is getting laced to increase the strength in it. Even when we talk about pills, you know, what's in it? How will it affect my body? Where did it come from? How do I know it's the real thing? We'll tell you, we ran into a big problem with marijuana being laced. And we ran into K2, which was a synthetic marijuana.
Spice.
Essentially, it was to replace the marijuana. It wasn't correct. It wasn't being chased after by the DEA. So then it wasn't even listed under the FDA. And they weren't even trying to do anything about it. It was being sold in stores. What they didn't realize, your corner store in Manchester, every corner store in the city, you could purchase K2 Spice. And what did they do from a marketing standpoint? They made it like bright purple and yellow and all these really flashy looks, and then advertised it as something that was not harmful, when in reality, there were people manufacturing them in warehouses in bins, spraying them with chemicals, drying them out, putting them in a package, and then shipping them up to New Hampshire, where you wouldn't even know if you were getting a 1 micro dose of it or if you were getting a full 2 or 3 doses of it. It was not regulated.
The problem was they were making it say, you know, picture a bathtub, right? You got all this vegetative matter, and they're spraying their chemicals on it or dousing it, whatever they're doing. When they're packaging those individually, they don't care if they sprayed heavy in this area and light on that area. It doesn't matter. They're going to get their $10, $20, $40 a package. In 2015, it looked like a scene from the apocalypse. Zombies everywhere. People were messed up on spice, passed out cold, going to the, you know, it was an uptick in emergency room visits. You could go to a park in the city. I don't say that with pride. I say that as fact. I was there. We spearheaded. We were able to get the governor to, you know, sign a state of an emergency. Next thing you know, it's banned from the state of New Hampshire. You can't sell it. But doesn't prevent people from going south of the border, buying it and bringing it up here and selling it for $40 a package. It's still happening. And so for those parents, and you know, 5, 10 years ago, parents thought it was okay. Well, it's not weed. Well, it's not any better. So be vigilant. Be aware of what your kids are doing.
Guys, our whole point in this portion of that is to really just explain to you guys, do not try something that you are not familiar with. Unless you are prescribed a drug or your parents are giving you a drug, prescription pill or anything, do not consume it. Do not take it from somebody. Even when we talk about, you know, ecstasy, or we're not going to get so deep into it, but you do not know what you're taking if someone gives you something you're not familiar with. Okay? And really, this is the whole "it can't happen to me" thing. Does anybody know who these people are? Anybody familiar? I mean, our parents probably know a little bit, but kids, this is what drugs does. This is what drinking does. This is what excessive abuse to your body.
They're all Hollywood actors. Well, except the lower right. Burned in a car crash. Passenger, right? But look what drugs do. Beautiful, beautiful, handsome guy, right? Do they look the same? I can tell you in our own personal life, I've seen people. In my professional life, I've seen people that were once, you know, spirited members, useful members of society that worked, had jobs, families. They look like this now. You think they said, I'm going to wake up one day and I'm going to put a needle in my arm? Well, you know what? I think I'm going to go into Joy's medicine cabinet and steal all her prescriptions. And today's the day I'm going to get addicted, and I'm going to stop working. I'm going to start stealing from everybody I love, and I'm going to live wherever I want. Does anybody wake up and say that? No, they don't. But you slowly morph into this black hole, this abyss that you can't get out of. I see it personally, professionally. Everybody in this room, I guarantee it, has somebody that has been, thanks for coming, guys. Good luck at practice, buddy. Everybody in this room has a loved one that is suffering from some form of addiction. There's no doubt in my mind. I haven't met a family yet in almost 23 years as a police officer and 45 years on this earth, and I talk to a lot of people. For those that know me, I like to talk. I talk to everybody about this. Every family has an adverse effect because of a loved one that's suffering. And it's up to you as parents to continuously educate your kids. We can do it. Joy can do it. Tracy can do it, right? Be bold? Sure. We can send this message. I don't care if I talk in front of one person or 1 million people. It's irrelevant to me because the message is the same regardless of who's in the audience. And if you're watching from home tonight, it's the same thing. Be aware of what your kids are doing. Stay involved in their life, right? The biggest thing is if you see something, say something. We all have friends. I won't get too personal, but you know, I was with some buddies recently. One of them, his wife just left him. It's 3 beautiful kids. Guess what? There's problems there. It goes beyond marital problems. There's more of an adverse effect of what's going on in his personal life, okay? I have lots of friends that have had addiction problems. Some I've helped through, some I can't help through. But it doesn't mean we stop trying to help those that need help, right? If you know your friends better than anyone, of course you do. You know, I know my friends better than anyone knows them. So if I think something's wrong, I approach them. I had a buddy a couple of years ago. I don't live in the area I grew up in anymore, but I had all these people that I hadn't heard from in years call me about this friend. So it's my good friend. What do? I go down there and I have a heart-to-heart with him. We get him the help he needs. He cleans up and he's doing well. He's a productive member of society again. But if you don't take that first step to help a loved one, family, friend, or whatever, who's going to do it? You have to start. Sometimes you need to be bold and take a stand. And that's all we're here to tell you about tonight. I mean, it's pretty powerful when you look at, you know, this community here, they get together. One thing about Bedford, it's a great community to live in. There's always help. You're always a phone call away. I mean, you know, parents, family, Donna, Spike, anyone at school. I mean, you guys don't, well, Spike, you're not old enough to know who Spike is yet, but
it doesn't matter.
Officer Nightingale, great person to talk to. I mean, you know, Bedford is a wonderful community. We're blessed to live here. I think we all are. But you just have to understand that unless you're willing to step up to the podium, don't complain about what your neighbor's doing, right? Because it starts at home with us as parents. And that's the bottom line about this whole presentation. We're no better than anybody else. We do this as parents of kids in the Bedford School District or kids that have kids or parents of kids that graduated. I'm not doing this as a police officer. I'm doing this as a father of 4 kids because I care about our community just like he does.
Guys, just a couple of things I want to touch on this slide. The immunity and Good Samaritan. I know you guys are younger and you're not driving yet, but please understand this.
Thank God for these two.
The Immunity Good Samaritan Act was created to prevent people from being afraid to help for fear of retribution, both criminally or friends. So here's the thing. If you have a friend who's sick, maybe taking something he's not supposed to, or even highly intoxicated, you do not have to worry about getting into trouble if you choose to call the authorities or someone, a professional, to get them, an ambulance or police or fire, because it was created so people wouldn't have that fear. So if you have a problem, they literally, and it sounds crazy, but they literally had people like leaving their friends alone in a home because they were afraid they were going to get in trouble, and they end up dying. So to try and prevent this, we want to give an opportunity.
Tell me about TB real quick.
About
TB. Tony Boxdale.
Oh yeah, you know, and I apologize. Yeah.
Just real quick. I mean, on that note, right, the Good Samaritan law was put into place. We have a friend that we grew up with. He was living in Amherst. Son was a phenomenal athlete, academic scholar. The kid he was a total package. He goes down to Boston, goes to college. Kid never really drank. Never did anything. He was just a good kid.
Actually, never drank in his life. Never drank in his life, guys. He was an aeronautical science and engineering student on a full ride to BU. And his first fraternity party, They got him so intoxicated that he passed out and they left him in the corner. And I won't use the term aspirated to make you understand, for the parents who understand, but for a young kid, he choked on his own vomit because he was so intoxicated, his body, which would naturally tell you to wake up because you're choking, was so bad, he did not respond to it. He choked on his own vomit and died in his sleep. 18 years old. His father worked so hard to get him out of the city, to educate him, to provide him with a good environment, to provide him with a good opportunity, and he did, and he let him go. And that's what happened, because those kids who are now being charged criminally were afraid. They were afraid to get in trouble. Well, here's the reality. You do not have to be afraid. Call if you must. I do not care. The police will not care. Maybe we're going to give you a hard time, and maybe you get a kick in the butt or whatever. Maybe you deserve it at the moment. But I'm telling you, the reality is, do not be afraid to help out your friend who's in trouble. If you come across this as you guys get a little bit older and end up in these parties, which you will inevitably, okay, do not drink. Be the one that's cognizant. Be aware of your surroundings, because you never know what's going on. We do not want you guys to become a victim on that. We talk about it because, you know what, we talked about addiction. You do not know. And in the end, really, we talk about addiction is an illness. It's not a character flaw. There's nothing we can do. People get cancer, heart problems, all these. We call it a sickness. It's an illness. Addiction is an illness. It's no different than any other sickness. The difference is they took something to begin and initiate that addiction. The stigma of addiction is gone. We all have opioid addicts in our home. We all do. Maybe it's not directly. Maybe it's 2 or 3 generations away. Maybe it's 2 or 3 states away, but we all have them. It's not an embarrassment. We're here as a community to fight it. We're here to give you guys bits of information, and we talk about that as the last piece because that's really ultimately where you end. You start with cigarettes and alcohol and marijuana, and you work your way up. Ultimately, you end up with an addiction to heroin or fentanyl. We do not want to see you guys do it. Again, as we talked about, you know, we're just 2 fathers trying to make a difference in not just in our kids' lives, but in the community.
Yeah, we all have choices to make, right? I like to tell my kids, you're always one choice away from good or bad. You're taking a risk. You don't know. That choice you make today can change your life forever, tomorrow and beyond. You just don't know what it's going to lead to. So make good choices. What do we always say at home, Jack? Right? Make good choices. You leave the house, make good choices. I want that to ring true in my kids' head every time they leave. Make good choices. I'm not there with them. I don't live with them, right? They go out on the road, they do their own thing. You give them the tools to succeed, and how they utilize those tools is up to them. You just hope and pray they make good choices and don't become one of these statistics. Because really, it's a crapshoot. You hope and pray that whatever you do for your kids now pays dividends in the future. I'm not Nostradamus. I can't predict what your kid's going to do.
We talk about the consequences, guys. We talked about death, addiction, expulsion from school, even jail in many cases. I know that recently we had a young lady speaking in Bedford who was one of our own, and she beat it. And you know what? And there are plenty who can beat it with the right environment, with the right support, with the right people at home. We can do that. Guys, we talk about who does this affect? It just doesn't affect you. It affects your mom, your dad, your classmates, your teachers, a community. It will tear a community apart faster than anything to watch a young child die in this community, because we are all connected in one way. We've either known this child, raised them, coached them, seen his parents, gone to church with his parents. This is what our community is about. And I think we're going to be okay if we continue to fight it together. And, you know, as we use our motto is to be bold and stand up for what we do here. We're trying to do the right thing. And that's to not do drugs, to not drink, to not get in a car when someone's been drinking, because it's a dangerous consequence.
I think this is too young of an audience really for the texting, maybe not.
Who's got a phone? How many of you boys have phones? Yeah. It's never too late. It's never too
Plaza,
early.
You probably lose the privilege more than you have it, right, Colbs? No?
Guys, your parents, you can give them this. You can put this text number. Bedford Police Department has this text up. It's where if one of your children is in a predicament that they're not comfortable with, they can text that and begin your message with tip Bedford, New Hampshire PD and follow with the information. Bedford will follow up. Even if you're at a party and maybe you got scared and you're concerned because there's someone there who's in danger or someone who's doing something really bad, you can text and tell them that, and they will respond and help. I don't want anybody to think that the whole stigma of snitching or whatever. If you save somebody's life, whether he's your classmate or whatever, then you've done the right thing.
If only one kid took the stand and did the right thing for Tony, he'd still be here today. He'd have graduated, he'd be on to bigger and better things, but guess what? Nobody was bold enough to take a stand that night. Whether it was out of fear, I don't know what caused it, I wasn't there. But they could have made a positive difference in his life. I know we're wrapping up here, it's 8 o'clock.
Guys, I just want to say thank you for giving us the opportunity. Again, you know, we appreciate being able to just get out here and do this. It's something that we've always loved to do because we feel like we have lived and been fortunate to be exposed to it, but yet to survive. We both come from addiction, and we're very blessed to be able to spread the word in a positive manner. And if we reach one kid, then we've done our part to help. And we couldn't do it without you guys showing up, so we thank you guys.
Thanks for coming.